Hey everyone. I'm Billy. I'm here with Sirisha Pratha from the NY Java SIG, who actually I just spoke with at your KC or your not your KC MIP, your user group here just recently as well. She will be presenting on how to make IntelliJ IDEA your own, or the IntelliJ IDEA your own. I think it's going to be going over plugins, but I'll leave that for the presentation. Before we get started, we're going to go through some quick Java news. And there we go. And of course, thank you to all of our sponsors, CRL for covering the meetup fees, and maybe hopefully once we start meeting in person at some point, it may be a little bit still, at least YRC for when they were hosting us. Some Java news of the month. So the release candidate 1 for JDK 17 has been published, and it looks like there's not going to be a release candidate 2 unless something major happens. Hey, Ilmor. So yeah, like unless there's like a hair on fire kind of issue found with the release 1 candidate, there will not be a release 2 candidate, and of course, Java 17 will be released on September 14th. Then also just a couple of, or at least one JEP I want to talk about is JEP 413. And this is a really cool one. It's just for documentation, but I think actually a lot of people are going to really like it. What it allows for is code snippets to be in the Java doc. And so like you can put your snippets in here and it will actually update with the code that you're telling it to present. So like as like the code within a method or class changes, then the Java doc will actually update to change it as well. So that way code won't get out of date or anything like that as time goes on, which is really nice. And so yeah, there's ways to do it for inline and external. So I'm not sure if it's going to have as a preview feature. I'll have to actually double check the JEP, but you can actually check it out yourself as well, JEP 413, to see if that's, I think it's probably not going to have a preview phase. It'll just go as part of Java 18, but I guess double check just to make sure that I am saying that correctly. What other really cool thing I also want to cover is, and this is coming in Java 17, is the ability to define new API within Java. So where did I have that? So you can see here, like this shows like all the new API, like the classes, packages, methods, fields, and all that have been added across all the different versions of Java. And of course, this is really great for discovering all the new stuff that's been happening in the JDK over recent releases. But of course, you can also do that yourself. I don't know if I have a good example for that, but that's something I will probably have here shortly after JDK 17 goes live. I'll have an example of how to actually be able to do that in your own code. Actually, I think I do. I'll share a tweet in the description for this YouTube video where I actually cover how you can actually even do this in your own code, which is really cool. Yeah, I'll share the link to this, our presentation here, also in the description as well, so you'll have all that. But yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Some releases. JUnit 5.8, they had the RC1 release just last week, and so their actual final release should be pretty soon. I think they saw one little bug in there or something, but all the same here within like the next week or two, JUnit 5.8 should be released. Also, Spring Boot 2.6.0 is on its way, and they had their milestone tune release, and that was just this week or last week. So 2.6.0 should be here sometime in the next month or two. In other news, by far the biggest news is KCDC. So that's going to be happening here in just a little under a month, September 15th through 17th, and it's going to be in person. So if you actually want to, get to talk to people face to face again, that's going to be really nice. I'm helping with running it and organizing this year, and we're taking COVID very seriously. I know it's unfortunately become a huge issue again here with the resurgence of Delta in the area, but we're going to be making sure about enforcing mask mandates for everyone attending, as well as providing sanitation supplies as well, so we can at least try to make things as safe as reasonably possible given the times, but I'm looking forward to it. I recently attended my first in-person conference or presented at an in-person conference just last month, and it's definitely something we're missing. I mean, it's great that virtual. I mean, it's great to see people like Ilmer and other people from, all across, the world being able to come, but it's also nice being able to kind of see people and getting that really nice, important in person, the hallway chat going again as well. So with that said, if you want to get involved, just please, by all means, like attend our meetups and also tell your friends to come. That just really helps a lot, getting a lot of people to come in and see our great speakers come to present. I actually probably need to update this, but if you ever want to present as well, just feel free to DM us on our KC Jug Twitter, and we monitor that really closely, and we'll be more than happy to get you guys organized to kind of present at some point as well. So with that said, so Lisa, I am going to hand it over to you, and I will pop off. And I'll leave it to Sirisha for anything else. So thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Hello everyone, thanks a lot for joining me in this session today at KC Jug. My name is Sirisha Pratha. I work as a senior specialist developer at a bank. I'm active in the open source community. I'm a committer on Eclipse Collections, which is an open source Java collections framework. I'm also one of the leaders at Pittsburgh Java User Group, and you can follow me on Twitter at Sirisha Pratha. That's the handle right there. So with that, I want to jump into really the topic for our discussion for this session today. And we will be talking about IntelliJ, and I'm hoping that a lot of you are actually IntelliJ IDEA users. If possible, leave a comment on the chat stating whether you're an IntelliJ user or an Eclipse user. Nonetheless, it's still good to see what is happening in the IntelliJ IDEA world. We will be talking about IntelliJ IDEA. We will be talking about productivity, customizations, but it's going to be a slightly different take than your usual, what you normally would have explored or probably would have tried out so far. At least that is how I felt when I was first looking into this topic, and I'm hoping that is the same thing for you as well. With that, let me introduce the agenda. We're going to talk about why we want to customize our IDE, what customizations are possible, the different types of plugins, and I've got some demos that I would like to show you all. And then at this point, we'll talk about how you can create your first plugin. And at the end of it, we will basically wrap up with a couple of key takeaways from this session. So let's get right into it. Why do we want to customize our IDE? So this is my personal opinion and also an observation. If you throw a tool at a software developer, one of our very first instincts is to change the theme of our tool. Or if we've used the tool quite often, then we probably, a few times at least, we would want to change the layout of it, maybe add some new shortcuts, and we do this for good reasons. We customize them for good reasons because we work with this tool so often, and we want our interactions to be helpful for us. We do this so that it's ergonomically more convenient. It increases our productivity. We want it to be easy on our eyes, and we want certain things to pop up at us. So these are all many reasons why we want to customize our IDEs or tools in general. The one such tool that we're going to be zooming in today is the IntelliJ IDE. And if you are an IntelliJ IDE user, we use it because it helps us with our software development process. It helps us stay focused on the business problem that we're solving, and it provides us assistance, whether it is with refactoring, with code formatting, with syntax highlighting, code completion, with debugging and whatnot. The list is endless. But the point of this session is that using the right tool for the job is good. It helps us. But knowing how you can customize this further, how can you take this to the next step? So you're not just using the features that came with the IDE, but that you can actually add new features to IntelliJ IDE, so you can create these personalized experiences, not just for yourself, but for your developer community. So basically your colleagues and maybe even a much wider community out in the open source. So with that, and we'll see just how we can do that and what are some of the areas where you can actually add these new features and plugins to your IDE. And before I do that, I want to quickly show this graph to you all. Um, and just take a look at this graph and see how much of this is actually true for you as well. This definitely happens to me more often than not. And I feel like as software developers, we spend a good amount of time coding, but we also spend a good enough amount of time looking up Stack Overflow issues, looking up what a technology does on Google, or what a framework does. We're learning all these things and documentation out on the internet. We also might be interacting with ticket tracking systems, third party tools, basically like your ticket tracking systems like Jira, UTrack, whatever may be the case. You might be interacting with some sort of CI/CD tools, your GitHub, GitLab. You might also have in your company vulnerability scan tools, Sonar Cube tools, or even project management tools that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. But every time we interact with these tools or whenever we do any of these research on the internet, we step out of our IDE. And the minute we step out of our IDE, it's a point of distraction. You would have lost context of what you were doing. And when you come back to your IDE, it takes a few minutes for you to sit there and think about what is it that you were even doing in the first place. It takes some time to orient yourself to get back to doing what you were doing, which I think, which is where if you had these plugins or these customizations can greatly improve your productivity as a software developer, and which is what we strive for always. And to convince you all a bit more, hopefully I can give you a few more reasons. Let's say you're working for a company which has frameworks that are internal to you alone, to your company. So you will not find for such areas where the frameworks or workflows are unique to you or to your company, you will not find a ready-made open source plugin out in the marketplace or in the JetBrains Marketplace. And these are all the places where if you invested your time and effort into building these plugins, it's not only helpful for you, but you can actually share those plugins with the rest of your developer community at work or out in the open source, whatever is your working group, to actually help become productive developers. Now, with that, let's see what customizations are already possible within the IDE. And let me increase the font right here. Okay, so one of the first few things that I learned as I was developing IntelliJ IDEA plugins is that the IntelliJ IDE that you're looking at right now is actually made up of many, many plugins, many, many small plugins. And what do I mean by that? Like, so as you can see right here, you have the Gradle tool window plugin, which is where you would see even the Maven tool window if you haven't reorganized your layout. This is the type of plugin. You can see several other plugins here at the bottom. Like, for example, you have the Git integration tool window right here. You have the SonarLint, of course, was something that I installed. But Terminal is, again, another example of an inbuilt plugin that comes with IntelliJ IDE. You also have all these pop-up menu options that you see right here on top are all, again, examples of plugins, including plugins that you would see in your editor when you right-click and you see a number of options in your editor when you right-click on a Java file. All of those are, again, small plugins that are inbuilt into the IDE. And then you also have code style, inspections, code completion, themes, key map are all, again, examples of plugins that basically are composed to make up IntelliJ IDE itself. Now, how is all of this possible? And it's all happening because of IntelliJ Platform. Now, IntelliJ Platform SDK is not a product of its own. It's not a product of its own, but it's actually a platform that allows us to build these different IDEs. An example of that is the IntelliJ IDE, and there are other examples of IDEs that were built using the IntelliJ Platform SDK. Now, when you use the IntelliJ Platform SDK, you actually get to benefit all the things that come out of the box. One of the things that I personally like is the JetBrains Swing components. You might be familiar with how a Swing component looks like, which is just the Java Swing text boxes, buttons, and whatnot. But with JetBrains Swing components, they are basically customized Swing components that are written for the JetBrains products. So when you actually build, and one of the biggest advantages of using this platform is when you actually build your IDEA plugins, you actually get the same look and feel as the rest of the IDE because you're using these JetBrains Swing components. And we'll see how all of this was incorporated when I come to the demo section. And then you have various integration points. So for example, if you wanted to build a tool window plugin, and again, we'll see all of this in details when I go to the demo section and how you can build your plugin section. But at a high level, if you wanted to create a plugin, which is a type of tool window plugin like your Gradle, then there is a very easy integration point to do so. If you wanted to add a new action item, action right here, there is a very easy integration point for that. And then the third thing that is also one of the highlights of the IntelliJ Platform SDK is that you can use their program structure interface now, which is probably their richest aspect of this entire platform. So with this, you can actually get a bunch of utilities around file type recognition, APIs around code completion, find usages, you name it, and you'll probably find that in the program structure interface. So one of the other things that I like to point out over here is that plugin development is no different than software development. And also, plugins can be written in just knowing Java. If you know Java, then you can write a plugin, or you could use any of the JVM languages. So again, plugin development is no different than software development. I say this because you still have to write some Java code, test it, build it, compile it, run it, build it, and then you deploy it. So it has all the same life cycle as any other application that you would write, and you're doing this in Java. So it's pretty like you don't have to learn a new language to actually build a plugin. With this, let's go to the different types of plugins that are available to us in the IDE. Now, you don't really need to know all these plugins, but it definitely serves as an inspiration when you want to go and write different types of plugins. It's sometimes useful to know these things exist. When I first started writing plugins, the only type of plugin I thought existed was the tool integration plugin. And when I learned that there were these other types of plugins, more ideas came to mind, and I was able to write plugins for these different types of plugins. So let's start with tool integration plugin. We've already been talking about this in the past few sections. So tool integration plugin is where you can actually integrate with third-party tools, and you would create like a tool window plugin. SonarLint is a great example of one such tool integration plugin. Then you have the user interface add-ons. Here's where you can actually make changes to the UI of the IDE. So let's say if you wanted to add a new action right here, instead of just having open dev tools, if you wanted to add another editor pop-up menu option, then this is the type of plugin you're looking for. Again, this will be covered in the demo section, and I'll call out what each of these different things mean really. Then you have the custom language support plugin. And this is, I think, one of their most powerful type of plugins that you can really write. With this type of a plugin, you can write new inspections, you can write new code completions, syntax highlighting, anything that you can do with supporting a programming language and if you wanted to do something like this, then this is the type of plugin you're looking for. Framework integration. Now, this is where you can, especially if you're working for a company where you have frameworks which are internal to your company and you wanted to bring those specific insights to your users who are using that framework. So it's like easy onboarding. You can pretty much write a quick Spring Boot application or a Docker YAML file and things like that. All of this is made easy because of the framework integration type of plugin. So that's the plugin that you're looking for. And lastly, UI themes. Of course, you can always write your own UI themes, and that's also possible using the IntelliJ Platform SDK. And then at this point, I'm going to show you all some demos. I also want to take a quick pause to see if, Billy, if there were any questions on the chat, or should I just continue on?
Let's see. It doesn't look like there hasn't been any questions yet. Yeah, just a few people kind of mentioning how long they've been using IntelliJ, and they've been very happy with it. But yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
Awesome.
But definitely be sure to put questions into the chat, and we'll answer them towards the end. So
perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being my eyes there. Yeah.
Problem.
So with that, let's look into some of the demos. So for the first one, I have a demo for these three types of plugins: one for tool integration, one for user interface add-ons, and one for custom language support. So we'll jump into the tool integration plugin demo, for which I wrote the third-party tool that I was interested to integrate my plugin with is Stack Overflow. Uh, so for this plugin, you can see that it was right here at the bottom. It's a type of tool window plugin. We've talked about this already. You can see here at the bottom of my IDE, that's where I've stacked it. And you can see that there are two search boxes which says search by tags, search by title. And then I have this little play button, which basically gets the Stack Overflow issues, and then I can refresh the results, refresh or clear the input. So with that, let me just say, I'm going to just say Maven as a tag, and let's do Java 11 because I feel like that is a popular topic. And you can see I have all these Stack Overflow questions from the Stack Overflow website itself. And then you can see that there are tags, and you can see some results right here at the bottom, some date information, answer count. And I can obviously sort it by the answer count or by tags. And I've also got a link right here. Let's say I'm interested to look into this question. It says, yeah, fatal error compiling. That's right. That happens quite a lot. And I wanted to see the answer for this post. And I can just simply click into it, and that should open up the link in here. Let me do that again. So hopefully it should open it up over here. Okay, it doesn't. Okay. So it opens up the link right here, and you can see basically that's pretty much the demo for the Stack Overflow plugin. But the whole point of this demo is not to go into the details of how the plugin itself works, but how I was able to incorporate the different things from the Intellij Platform SDK, and how I was able to create this plugin, which has the same look and feel as the rest of your IDEA. Now, right off the bat, because I created this as a type of tool window plugin, I get some of these things out of the box. I didn't have to write any additional code for this. And you can see that there's this little gear icon, which when I click on it, you can see all these different options. And there's obviously the minimize button, which if you opened any other tool window, I'll just give it a second for it to show up. Okay. If I opened any other tool window, you can see that there's the same gear icon and also the same minimize button right here, which is what you'll see here in my plugin as well. One more thing I just like to clarify before I forget is this is not a plugin you'll find in the JetBrains Marketplace. This happened in one of my previous talks where people were actually trying to find this plugin and trying to install it from the JetBrains Marketplace. This is something that I built and is only available in my local machine. I just want to clarify that so you don't waste your time doing this, trying to find this on the JetBrains Marketplace. Anyway, back to the plugin itself, and you can see if you've used IntelliJ often, you might find these search boxes to be familiar looking, and that's because they are available right here. Oh, my shortcuts don't work. Okay, yeah, they do. Okay, it's just all big. Okay. You can see, interesting. Just give me 1 second, sorry. Okay, this is too big, but anyway, this is my settings window, and you can see that I'm using the same search box as I was using, as I have right here in my Stack Overflow plugin. So it has that little search with history option and also an option to clear the results. Again, I didn't have to write any additional code. All that I had to do was basically find the right text box that I can fit in over here that I can incorporate into my plugin. Also, as I was just showing you, you can actually, these type of search boxes actually retain history as well. And I can even clear the results, and you can quickly input that field from the history itself. Again, if you've used IntelliJ IDE, these two icons must be familiar to you. The very first one here is the one that we typically see here in our run configurations. I'm using it for get Stack Overflow issues. Again, they have tons and tons of such icons. Basically, any icon you see here in the IntelliJ IDE is part of the Intellij Platform SDK, so you can use it in your plugin. Again, another famous icon, which is the one that you use here to reload all from disk. I'm using it to clear all my inputs and output, the input and also the output for this plugin. So there you go. And also the table here itself is also a custom JetBrains table. It has some alternate shading and whatnot available as part of this plugin. So that's the demo for the first plugin. That's the tool integration plugin. And then for the second one, we have the user interface add-on. For the user interface add-on, I'm going to switch over to a different project, but I just want you to remember that user interface add-ons are the type of plugins where you can make changes to the UI of the IDE. So let's do that. Let's go to, yeah, so here you go. I have my Eclipse Collections Kata. That's the project that I'm at. So for this plugin, I wanted to add a new editor pop-up menu option, a contextual map option over here, to search for code snippets on GitHub. So that's what I wanted to do. But my plugin is also smart enough to only show me that option. So you can't see it right here, what I'm trying to show you. It only shows up when I have text selected. So right click, and I'm going to show you those two options. So you can see two new options came up. One is search with Google, which is already an existing option from the IntelliJ IDEA itself. I haven't done anything about that. I've added a new option right here, which says search GitHub. Now, when I click on this should open a link on, it's opening it up on the different screen, but it's basically opening up a link in my browser, and it's actually pulling up all the results that match mutable bag here in github.com. And additionally, I could also enhance my plugin as a next step. So I can programmatically filter only Java files, and that is possible through the program structure interface, which I was talking about, infrastructure, which I was talking about previously. You can actually use the APIs from that package, which basically helps you figure out if it's the type of Java file or if it's some other programming language, and it actually helps you, which you can send it as a query parameter to the search results on GitHub. Now that's the second one. So you can see that it's pretty similar to what you have for search with Google, but I'm actually searching GitHub because that's where I want to search these options. And you can see that when I don't have any text selected, I can't see that option. So for the third type of plugin, again, quickly, just a refresher as to what that is, custom language support plugin, which is where you can add additional inspections, code completion, syntax highlighting. Those type of operations can be performed by this type of a plugin, custom language support plugin. And for this plugin, what I really did is I created, and to give you a bit of a context of what I was trying to do here, as I mentioned earlier in my introduction, I'm a committer on an open source project called Eclipse Collections, which has tons and tons of rich API, which can convert some of these streams operations into Eclipse Collections APIs. And that was something that I was looking into doing, basically providing inspections for our users so they can go from these streams pattern to these Eclipse Collections patterns. Now, Eclipse Collections, like I said, is a collections framework. So you can see that if I had streams which has the filter, find first, and or else, I can basically, the equivalent of it is basically the detect API in Eclipse Collections. And you'll see how I've done that, how this transformation is going to happen. So that was the problem that I was looking to solve. And I created a plugin that can help me write a rich inspection. So it actually can do some more pattern matching and actually tell me, can actually do the conversion for me. As you can see, my plugin is already installed, as was all the other plugins. And you can see that there is already this little yellow color, beige looking warning sign, which basically means that this inspection has detected a pattern that I'm interested to change. And it's basically this .people.stream filter find first, which according to my plugin should actually be converted into detect API from Eclipse Collections. And I can also read the description of this. It says filter and find first can be replaced with detect API and Eclipse Collections. The following expression can be replaced, and you have more details right here. All of this was things that I was able to configure in the plugin. So the users of this plugin can actually read. And if they're okay with this, can actually say, yes, use detect in this scenario. And you can see that the inspection works. All of that looks good. The warning sign should disappear and everything compiles fine. So this is the third type of plugin, which is the inspection, adding more support to a programming language, Java in this case, and I'm doing all these method detection and actually converting into something that I want it to be. So that's the end of the demos, and I'm going to switch back into the plugins demo project, and we will talk about how you can do this now, how you can write your first plugin. So let's jump right into it. The first so there are quite a few moving parts to this, and I'm hoping through this next few minutes I can at least show you all like where what is available, and then you can actually it's less overwhelming when you try this out on your own. So for the first one, for the project structure, a quick note, there are two ways to do this. I'm going to show you the way I did to build all these plugins, but there is an alternative way to do this. You can use the IntelliJ Platform plugin template, which I'll share with Billy in a bit, so he can actually put it in the chat itself. But you can find this right here, which is basically a repository that you can clone, and it'll actually create all the boilerplate template for you to actually build your plugin. Like I said, there are quite a few moving parts to this, so using either this method or the method that I'm about to show will help you set up some of these things and make the configuration a little less overwhelming and intimidating. So with that, I'm going to show you all how to create a new project. So with this file, you're going to use the new project wizard. So new project, and you're going to select Gradle. Gradle is their chosen way of building plugins, so we have to choose Gradle. Java, if you wanted to use Kotlin, go for it. I'm going to use Java, and the one thing that you have to note over here is selecting the IntelliJ Platform plugin. Now, this is the plugin that basically provides all the boilerplate code that we saw with the GitHub template. This is exactly what this plugin is going to do. It's going to create all the configuration files, all the Gradle files, everything that you need. So you have one less thing to do when you actually have the project in front of you. You can actually skip this step, but that would mean that you would have to manually add these files, and you'll see just how many files get added and why it is best to actually just select this option up front. And then you do next, and then you give it a name, and then you give it some artifact coordinates, give it a version, give it some organization. I'm going to just do SP, and then finish. So this like any other new project window and how it works, it's going to create a new project with all the Gradle files and everything else. I'm just going to let it do its thing for like a second. And I'm going to change this one thing real quick because there was a bug that was identified with this version of the plugin. So I'm just going to change that to a lower version, which I know works for sure. So we don't immediately run into a Gradle build fail issue. And I think the fix for this bug in 1.1.4 is apparently scheduled to be released in the next milestone, but I do not know when that is. So this is basically doing Gradle, and then while it's rebuilding, I'm going to show you a few things that it already set up. So you have the settings.gradle file, the build.gradle file, and then you have the source, main resources, and plugin.xml file. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details about what the Gradle stuff does, because that's like any other Gradle project. If you're familiar with Maven or Gradle, then that's like any other build tool that you can actually, which remains the same, whether it is a plugin or not. But I'm only going to call out the pieces which has the IntelliJ plugin stuff involved. So like the very first thing that we want to talk about is the build.gradle file. And you can see, ignore this little window at the bottom, let it do its build and whatnot. But right here, you can see that there is the build.gradle file. It has the ID Java, that's the language that I chose. And then this is the most important thing right here. org.jetbrains.intellij version 1.1.3, which is nothing but the Gradle IntelliJ plugin. So this plugin is basically how you can build, test, verify, and even publish your plugin. All of this is possible because of this Gradle IntelliJ plugin, and you can see all of that, all of the setup that it actually creates for you right here under Gradle. So you have the demo, Casey Jug. You have the IntelliJ section task right here, and you can see all the other Gradle tasks that this IntelliJ plugin basically, this Gradle IntelliJ plugin basically created for you. You can see the build, you can see patch plugin XML, run ID, verify plugin, and also publish plugin. And there are like 10 other options right here that you can use to test out your plugin and to build your plugin. So you need that. And that gets automatically created for you as soon as you use either the file new project wizard, or if you use the other way. And then I'm not going to go into the other stuff. The other section that is important is the IntelliJ section. This part of the configuration is important. This is the version that you will be using to build your plugin. So I'm using 2020.3. If you wanted to lower this version, you could do that. If you wanted to support a wider range of users, you can make this 2019.3. And then there are certain tasks in the plugin that can help you test if your APIs are compatible with that version of plugin. That version of IntelliJ. And then you have lines 22 to 26, which is the patch plugin section, which is where you can write and log all your change notes. You can either maintain this as it is, it's basically like HTML, or you could link this to another file, which is a .html file. For now, just remember that this is where the patch plugin XML the change notes information comes from build.gradle file. In just a second, we're going to see how all of this information is going to come together for your user and for yourself. So the next important file is the source main resources plugin.xml file. Now, this is the most important file for your plugin. It's the entry point for your plugin, and this contains both the what of your plugin and how of your plugin. That's basically what this configuration file is basically trying to convey. So for the what, you have an ID, and then you have a name for your plugin, and some vendor information. So this is where typically your company information or your information based on whoever is producing these plugins is going to, that's the information that's going to go in here. And then you'll have a short description of something about your plugin. So I'm going to switch back to my plugins demo project, where all of this information is already filled out. So you can see some of the examples behind what happens, how this plugin.xml file looks. Again, we are here in plugin.xml file. You can see it's in source main resources plugin.xml. Just as what we were talking about, it has an ID, it has a name, it has the vendor information, which in my case, the vendor is SP, and some email address, whatnot, and then a description. I'm going to take a step back and just show you how all of this information comes together. Hopefully this shows up, and then plugins, and you can see this is where I've installed the Stack Overflow plugin. Why is all of this so difficult today? Okay, that's fine. I'm going to just do it this way. So you can see the plugins at the bottom, settings plugins, where we normally install the plugins from. And this is the plugin.xml file that's backing up this. So I've selected Stack Overflow demo. You can see the vendor information is right here, line 4, which is SP. That's the same information. And you can see that I also have a description which says searches Stack Overflow issues and questions, the same as you have on line 7. The change notes, if you remember, the change notes were coming from build.gradle file. That is exactly what this is. This is where all of this gets populated. So your users can basically see what happened between each version, and they can choose to update or not update the plugin as it's available to your users. Or this could be just for your own reference if you've just done what I've done, which is install the plugins in your IDE. So this is where all of this information comes. Now let's go into the interesting parts, which is how does all of this come together. So the very first section is line number 12, which is depends. Every plugin needs to depend on the modules, platform modules at a very minimum. And then you can see this information right here. It's taking a second to load, and you can see what it does. It's basically going to provide all of this functionality comes out of the box by just depending on this platform modules, and all plugins should declare this as a dependency. But if you wanted more, you can always include more things as dependencies, other plugins as dependencies. You can include even like languages, for example, Java, if you're interested in getting Java features into it, like the PSI, the program structure infrastructure, then all of that can be included by adding a dependency to modules.java. And you can see right here, I've got only the platform ones. But I do have an example where I'm adding an additional dependency. We'll come to that in just a second. The next two sections, remember, these are the two sections that are important. So you have the extensions, which is line 14, and actions, line 20. Both extensions and actions are basically ways in which you can extend your IDE and add new features. This is where all the magic basically happens. So this is the tool window type of plugin. This is the Stack Overflow window. So the extension point, I don't have anything for actions. You can have actions and extensions. But in this case, I only needed an extension point, which is the tool window extension point. Each extension point generally contains some sort of an entry point class, like their main class, basically. It also has an ID. And because this is the tool window type of extension, it has some attributes that are specific to this extension point. So in this case, tool window, whether the anchor is at the bottom, you want it at the east or west or whatever may be the case. In this case, it's or right or left, whatever may be the, I don't know if this is going to open. Okay, I guess it's left, right, and bottom. Those are the three options. So in this case, I wanted it at the bottom. So I've got this over here. But let's come back and look at the factory class itself. And notice the same pattern. You'll see the same pattern with the remaining two plugins. So just keep an eye out for that. If I open this, you can see that it actually implements tool window factory. And this is pretty much where the entire logic begins. This is where your entire, the UI components, your REST API calls, all of that information will go in. So that is it for this particular tool window type of extension. So this is mostly it. Now let's look at user interface demo. So for the user interface demo, if you remember, the demo was to search code snippets on GitHub. So you'll see this will look a little different, but obviously the sections on top will be the same. You have the what, the description, some ID, vendor information, and whatnot. And then you have the dependency. Again, in this case, I just needed the platform dependency. I just needed access to the pop-up menu. That is all I care. In this case, you can see that the extensions are empty, but I'm going to create a new action. And you can see what I have here in the action. Like I said, I'm creating a new action. It has an ID. As with any extension or action, typically there should be a class like a starting point. We'll come back and see what this action itself does, but this is the main class, so to speak. It has the text. The text is nothing but the text that it is used to display over here in the pop-up menu. So in this case, I have search GitHub. There you go. And then this is the description. The description is what you'll see at the bottom. I wonder if you can see it. You can see, no, there you go. You can see at the bottom right here. Let me see if you can spot it. It says search code snippets on GitHub repositories. That's the same. It's basically the long description of the action. And then icons. I talked about this in the Stack Overflow demo, but even for my GitHub search GitHub option, I'm actually repurposing an icon that was already available to me as part of the IntelliJ Platform SDK, which you can actually find here. It's the same icon that I'm actually getting to use over here in my action. And that is available to you here. With just a few words, I can actually add that. Now, line number 23 is important because this is where it tells you where do you want me to add, like where do you want this action to show up, right? So you're saying that you wanted it to be available in the editor pop-up menu. So that is this right click and this pop-up menu that you see. I want it after search web. Search web here is nothing but the search with Google. And I'll show you what the search with Google, their XML file, the search with Google's XML file basically has an ID called search web. In this case, my ID is this. Their ID seems to be search web. And I'm saying that I want my search option to be after the Google's search option. So that's the end of the deep dive into the user interface plugin.xml. And then the last one is the custom language support, which you'll see. Okay, one last thing before we leave this is I promised that I was going to come and show you this. So search GitHub action itself, which is the main class, actually extends the dumb-aware action. And you have to, as soon as you extend this, there are these two methods that you need to override. implement, and you can basically see that I've got a search query right here, and I'm sending in the selected text to the GitHub action. This is all that went into creating the search GitHub option action. And then for the next one, you can see the custom language support plugin. So custom language support plugin was where I converted some of the Streams APIs into Eclipse Collections APIs. It was a language support plugin. And you can see that the what again remains the same. And then it has the platform dependency. But in this case, because I wanted the Java is like PSI, I actually included this module, which is the Java module. And you can see that I only needed an extension, no action required. And for the extension point, for the tool window one, I use the tool window. And for this, I'm using local inspection. It has a bunch of attributes that make sense for this local inspection. But then again, everything has a main class of some sort. In this case, it's this. And then it has the level set to error. I think I made this warning when I deployed my code. So you can actually change this to warning or error, depending on your use case. In my case, it was warning, but I was testing out error. So I think that was just code that was left over. But the implementation class, in this case, I'm just going to quickly show you what it does. It's basically it extends from the abstract base Java local inspection tool. And then from there on, I can use all of the PSI APIs to traverse through, do some fancy pattern matching, and actually convert my APIs to Eclipse Collections APIs. And you can see this is my display name, Streams API to Eclipse Collections API. The group path is Java. And then you can see that it's enabled by default and all of these other attributes, which you can control as you're developing this plugin. So that's the end of my, hold on, it's not the end of it. Let's go back to your first plugin. I think there are a few things still I want to cover. So we talked about extensions, actions, plugin.xml file, build.gradle. And then, okay, so the next one is the run ID task. Like, how do you test this out, right? You need that. The best part about plugin development is that you can actually get an instant gratification, because you can quickly see if your plugin worked or not. So if you remember, one of the things that I did with Run ID, with the custom language support plugin, is that I had the level set up to warning, but right now I'm changing this to an error. I'm going to go in here, go to tasks, go to IntelliJ, click on the Run ID task. Now, what this basically does is it's going to create a new IntelliJ window. It's going to open a new IntelliJ window with just the plugin installed and nothing else. So it's basically everything that comes with IntelliJ IDE plus the plugin that I'm creating. That's it. And no other third-party plugins or whatnot. And you can click, test it out, do whatever you want to at this point to make sure that your plugin works as expected. So that's I think one of the best parts about plugin development, because you get to actually just bring all of this up and see how, to see if your changes worked or not. This is going to probably take a second because it's actually downloading the whole thing. But while this comes up, let me quickly show you something else. So going back to your first plugin, we'll come back to the Run ID task and show you how all of that looks. The last item over here is the internal actions and UI inspector. That is basically the UI inspector. Now, one of the things that I was very fascinated about when I was building plugins is to create plugins that matched some of the components that I was seeing here in IntelliJ IDE. If I, let's say, I wanted to use this particular component, I initially didn't know how to figure out what this component is, like how to go look for it. But later on, I figured out that there was actually what is known as a UI inspector, and I can show you how that works. So if you did UI inspector, I'm going to turn this feature on, and I can basically Control-Alt-Click to view the component info. So I'm going to Control-Alt-Click on this component, and it should open up a window which tells me what type of a component it is. So in this case, it's basically a combo box button, and this is the class for it, and I can basically use the same information in my plugin. For example, if I went to the settings tool window, if I clicked on this and Control-Alt-Click on this, or on the plugins one, this is basically a search text field. It is a UI. It's a Swing component in the com.intellij.ui package, and you can see it's search text field, which is again it's probably uses the swings text field itself, but it looks nice with the history and everything. So, which is what I did with the Stack Overflow tool window plugin. If I right click, if I control click, you'll see that I'm using the same search text field. So I found that this actually helps. Firstly, the plugin development to have like a nice discovery process where you can go and hunt for these new different types of components that you want to use in your plugin, and also speeds up your plugin development process in general. So whether it is with icons or with like utilities, everything that is spread across the IntelliJ Platform SDK can be discoverable from just using UI Inspector, in my opinion. I think, oh, the run ID has come up. So like I said, it has created a new IntelliJ IDE for me. I'm going to make this full screen because I had already changed this. And you can see that when I first showed you the plugin, this was orangish, yellowish, beige color warning. But now you can see that because I converted this into an error, you can see that it's all like dotted red lines because, and you can see this immediately happen. Like you created the plugin, you're testing this out really with a fully functional IDE. So there is going to be no surprise later. So yeah, that's the run ID task, the most useful of the GitHub, the Gradle tasks that is available to you. We are not doing the workshop in this session. This was something that I did for NY JavaSig recently, but we are at the end of our session. So I'm going to just wrap it up with a few key takeaways from the session. So firstly, like I said, plugins save time, they increase our productivity. It's definitely a worthwhile investment, not just for you, but for your entire developer community. Whatever is your working group, you can identify some of the common points and actually create plugins. Plugins are developed in Java or JVM languages. So if you already know any of these languages, it's very easy to get started. So try it out with like something simple as creating a new editor pop-up menu option. Think of plugins are basically as small, lightweight applications that are living in your IDE container. So it's the same sort of software. You basically have the same mindset as you would for any other application development. And then for the third point, I absolutely love this quote by Trisha G. She says, "Context is queen," which I think IntelliJ IDE does a fantastic job of providing all these contextual actions. But being able to teach your IDE new contexts of what you want, and being able to bring these outside external distractions and contexts into your IDE is a game changer. And that's how I felt with any of these plugins that I've written. And then for the last one, if you're thinking about plugins, but you do not know where to start, then identify common development workflows that you have, or common areas that you frequently visit, common tools that you frequently interact with. See if you can integrate that into your, to your IDE. Like I said, the Stack Overflow, GitHub are all places where I frequently visit. So I basically added a plugin that I can interact with from my IDE. And then the next thing is resources. This is just a section with just like a bunch of links, all the things that I talked about, like the quick start guide, the different types of plugins. In this link, you can actually find what you call not just the different types of plugins, but an example for each type of plugin. We already talked about IntelliJ Platform plugin. There is also Extensions Explorer, because they have so many different extensions. You can actually find something that matches your expectations right here in the Explorer. Then you have the UI guidelines, which is one of my favorite things to have learned, because I'm a back-end developer. I'm not very good with UI and front-end development. I know what I might like, but I don't think I make like the best UIs. So they actually have what is known as the UI guidelines, where they actually talk about what should be used where. Like they actually give you reasons, and they'll tell you things like, if it's a text area, these are all the areas that you should be using, when to use it and how to use it, and in what context, what are some of the incorrect usages. So this definitely helped. When I was building plugins, I would like try to overuse some of the components, and then I would go back and look at these guidelines and refrain myself from doing something excessively with a component that I like. And then you have the plugin configuration file, which is the plugin.xml file that we saw, and then this goes into great lengths about what exactly goes into it. And then you have actions, extensions, which we spoke about, the Gradle IntelliJ plugin tasks that you can find here, right here. Each of the this link will basically describe everything in here. And then you have the UI inspector, which I had already showed at the end. So I'm going to share my GitHub GitHub link, so you'll have access to all these resources and the code for all of this. I'll just share it with Billy so he can put it on the comment chat. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for listening to me. I think we have time for questions and answers if there are any questions in the chat.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Sirisha. And yeah, actually, you kind of already answered one of the questions, which is, can we find your code on GitHub? And so, yeah, I'll get all that posted into the description for the YouTube video once you send that to me.
Okay.
And also, to a little bit earlier, someone was asking about sharing a link to the Java News Guide, and that is actually, I updated the description already to include links to that as well as to the tweet I mentioned. So to some of the questions that were asked for you, one of them from Elmer was, are you using the Community or Ultimate Edition? And as a lot of the plugins that you show, could they still work with the Community Edition? Or
so my plugins, yeah. So you can actually specify what version or what type of edition do you want your plugins to be compatible with in your build.gradle file. So I think if the version is just this, then it should be compatible with Community as well. If you have something that you only want only Ultimate Edition users, then you do something like -IU. So you can actually sort of specify or make it available for Ultimate users or for Community users based on this. And then you can read more about it right here. Let me pull up this link. So yeah, that information is available to you. As far as plugin development itself goes, you can use both Community or Ultimate Edition. I happen to have Ultimate Edition, but you can use either one of them. So this is what I was talking about. So this is the version of the IDE that will be used to build the plugins, and values may be IC, IU. I haven't had to use any of these, but they have the Go, Rider, JPS, PyCharm, I think, PC, PY. So yeah, you can actually specify the version, whether it is IU, IC. Okay, I guess it's prefixed, not suffixed. Okay.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another one from Justin, which is, how do you get your plugin in the marketplace?
I haven't had to do that, so I can't really talk at length about this. The way I do it is, as soon as I build my plugin, I find it here in the distributions, and I simply go to plugins. If this is just for me, obviously this is not scalable, but I'm just going to go and install the plugin from disk, and I'm going to just select that, and I can just use it for my own self. I do not have a lot of details into how that happens because I haven't personally done it myself. But they have lots of documentation about it, like what goes in as steps. Like they have, I think, they have like a staging area. I think they have like this contract that you have to, not contract, but some sort of checklist that you have to go through before you can get your plugin to the marketplace. And I think when you have all of that figured out, you've established your vendor details and all of that, you can actually do the publish plugin itself, which can publish the plugins to the marketplace. With like, you have to give it like your auth details and things like that here in the plugin.xml file or build.gradle file. I forget where it is. But they have information about it. Honestly, I do not know how that works. But if you wanted to install it for yourself, you can do it this way. Or you can actually deploy these zip files to a Tomcat web server. That is how we do it in other places. So you don't have to necessarily have it in the marketplace. If it's only distribution that you're looking for, then you can even do this as a custom repository. So if you have a Tomcat server up and running, you basically just drop these zip files there and create an update plugins.xml file. And anyone who has access to that Tomcat server can download that plugin.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah. I think that's all the questions we have. And then also Daniel Hillenbrand wanted to say he thought your presentation was really great on how to improve your IntelliJ experience. So, all right. Well, That's it. Oh, I forgot to mention that because of KCDC happening, we won't be having a meetup for September, but we will be back for October. So with that said, all right. Thanks, everyone, for coming. See you
Thank you,
later.
everyone. Yep. Bye bye.